Hey, I'm DSP, and today we're going to be talking about the game Wet, which is for the Xbox 360 and also the PlayStation 3. So let's get started. Well, there's a common misconception about this game that before we jump in, I just want to get out of the way. A lot of people see the words Bethesda right here on the case and say, hey, Bethesda must have made Wet. It's a great game, right? Bethesda also made Fallout 3. Well, the truth of the matter is, if you look at the back of the box, there's about 4 more game developers on this sucker. Bethesda did not make this game. They simply were the producer, and I believe maybe the publisher, distributor, whatever the technical term is. They had nothing to do with the game development and nothing to do with the gameplay herein. Sometimes people get fooled when you see a big name like that or a game studio on a game that you may not have heard about, or you may have heard a little bit about but you're not too sure if it's good, and just assume because the big name is on there that the game is going to be good. Well, actually, Wet is a case where this does not apply, and you will see what I mean in just a couple seconds.
So the game opens with some shady dealing between Stephen Hawking and the most white-sounding middle-aged Asian dude you've ever met. They are basically trying to do a little switcheroo for some kind of a package. You're not sure what it is. And of course, he ends up getting double-crossed, Stephen Hawking that is, and the Asian tries to make off with the briefcase. Well, enter Ruby, our gun-toting, bullet-time blasting, sword-wielding killer, who jumps down, isn't too happy with this Asian dude that just stole her Fudgy the Whale. So she takes off after him. You get a full first level of tutorial basically showing you all these different ways where you can utilize Ruby's attacks, including her Pete Townsend slide, her jumping bullet time blast, all kinds of moves like that. Hey, about halfway through the level you also get to learn how to use the sword, and then you also get a little bit of a demo of how the rage mode works, where basically Ruby gets splattered with blood and then she ends up just going apeshit on everyone for huge combos. Continuing on with that, she keeps following the Asian guy, ends up in the second stage, which is actually a really, really cool stage in the game, where you're on the highway and you pursue in a chase, and Ruby doesn't have a car, so she ends up doing some matrix dodging and jumping across all these cars on the highway in this crazy high-speed chase to get back that ice cream cake. And then finally, at the end, she catches up with the guy, takes him out. He makes a rude joke to her, so she gets pissed off and blows him to hell. Pretty cool.
Well, hey, the first 2 stages weren't too bad. The first one was about tutorial and how to learn all the basic bullet time moves, the different dodges. And the second stage was a really cool, Matrix-style jumping off of cars on the highway, which really you've never done in any game before. So the third stage is going to be really cool and original too, right? No, it's just going to be more bullet time. But that's okay, because the game does have multiple stages, and as you move on, there's more bullet time, and then there's some more bullet time, and then to mix it up a little bit, they do throw in some bullet time, and it's just pretty much the same thing over and over and over through the whole game. It gets really repetitive, and you just end up kind of saying, what the hell happened here?
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with bullet time segments, especially in this type of game, with this Tarantino-esque kind of feel to it, this film grain, this classic kind of a grindhouse movie style, but it's just the same thing over and over again. It's constant just hack, slash, dodge, shoot, run, dodge, slash, over and over and over. And it's pretty cool for the first couple of stages, but once you get to about level 4 or 5, you're going to find that this game runs pretty stale. There are some power-ups later on. I mean, there's a shotgun, you get dual Uzis, and then later on at the end of the game you actually get exploding arrows, which are pretty cool, and are pretty much the only effective weapon to use against some of the bigger guys that come out with the miniguns and chain guns. But there's really not a lot of variety here, very little to do. The real main goal of most of the stages is just to survive through it, and then get to one of these rooms where you're basically locked in there with a bunch of lunatics trying to kill you, and there are flaming skulls on the wall that you have to hack and slash to get enemies to stop spawning out of those rooms. And that's almost all of the gameplay in the entire game, and I've only been talking right now about that for about 30 seconds. Besides that, the only other variations are some of the tougher enemies and maybe 1 or 2 boss battles in the game, which really does not give a lot of variety, and really it kind of makes you disappointed if you went out and actually bought this game for retail price.
Alright, so besides the combat, is a story to the game, but it's so basic, it's so just kind of peripheral to what you're really doing most of the time, it doesn't really matter. It kind of falls under the radar. I mean, sure, there's a double cross, there's a heist, there's a lot of fighting, and that's about it. There's nothing complex to it, and it's not anything to really attract you to the game. The characters are also kind of just second thoughts. There's this ugly bitch who looks like a tarantula, and incidentally that's her name. There's some dude whose name I can't even fucking remember because he was in like one scene of the game, and there's some other asshole who later on captures you and tries to torture you, but it's all just so not important to what you're doing. It's just kind of like, I don't really care about the story. It's kind of like watching a 90-minute Tarantino movie. You know, you just want to go in, have some fun, you know, enjoy everything, and leave. You don't really want to have a reason to come back. And that's unfortunately the kind of flavor that the game leaves in your mouth. But the one good thing that I do want to mention is the music. I think the music in this game was outstanding. Better than most games these days. Let's take a look. Alright, let's get these assholes. Nice soundtrack. This is also from the demo. Gotta be ready for those button pushes. Hey. X. Got it. Oh! Peace out. You see what I mean? The music is actually pretty good. They hired real independent bands to come in and record original songs for this game. And it really gives a little bit of variety and flavor to the soundtrack that you really wouldn't expect in a mainstream video game these days. It just kind of adds to this different kind of grindhouse atmosphere that the game has, and I think it's an added plus. But then of course, as always, you get to the end of the game and there's a big boss battle.
So you finally reach the end of the game, you've killed several thousand generic-looking enemies, and of course there's going to be a final showdown with this crazy-looking bitch tarantula, right? Well, just let me warn you, the final fight in this game is a huge letdown. It is nothing more than a stupid quick time segment where you have to do timed button presses at the right time. And it's not even that hard. It's pretty easy and just very disappointing considering for the whole game you kind of see this character, you know, walking around acting really weird, and then when there's the final payoff it ends up being really, really bad and stupid and boring.
So in conclusion, Wet isn't a bad game. I mean, it definitely has a plan, a vision of what it's trying to do. However, it just really doesn't warrant a purchase. The game clocks in at under 6 hours long for a campaign, and these days that just does not cut it, especially when you have so many games out there with massive replay value, which is the other thing I want to mention about Wet. Once you beat it, you're never going to want to play it again. There's really nothing unlockable. There's a couple challenge modes, you know, little obstacle courses and things that you can go for achievements, but who gives a shit? I came to play the game, I beat the game, I'm done with the game. And there's no multiplayer, so there's really no reason to ever, you know, jump into that game again, so why the hell would I? Wet, unfortunately, is a disappointment. I really like the demo, I like the style that they went for, but as soon as you actually jump into the real game, you realize it's just more of the same over and over and over. So, I gotta be honest, like I said, this is the Hateful Truth. This isn't some mainstream video site that's gonna give this a padded review. I gotta give Wet a 5.5. And I know that's really shitty in some people's eyes, but when I gave a decent game like Red Planet, or Red Faction Guerrilla a 7, I got to give this game an honest, you know, review, and it only gets a 5.5 from me. Too bad. Try better next time. No door is immune to my ninja blade. Fuck you, door. That's right.